October 16th. I'm gonna call to order for the October 16th Parks and Conservation Land Board meeting. If we could go around the table for attendance, just to record it, it's easier that way. Jessica Sargent.
Bill Perlet.
Cole Hall Community Services.
Nick Bush, Community Services.
Steven Zamorowski.
Suzanne Foley Ferguson.
Richard Harvey.
Rick Murphy, Doug Williams, Anson Boger, Andrew Mackey, Scarborough Land Trust invited guest.
Scott Kunkler, Scarborough Land Trust.
Excellent. So I think that's all we have for attendance. Oh, no, we didn't have Maggie. Do you mind stating your name for attendance?
Maggie Vishnu.
Thank you. We have,
Taking notes. Me?
no,
Oh, okay. Yay.
you're like, I'm just glad I'm not taking notes.
Uh,
So you had a comment before we open it up to public comment?
It was just a question and I can ask it when we get down to the application process.
I am now going to open the floor for public comments. I don't see anyone online. Do either of our guests have comments? Oh. Seeing none, we'll open an opportunity for public comments at the end. So included in your packet were the meeting minutes for the prior two meetings. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Great, man.
I'm gonna abstain since I was.
Oh, they're awesome.
Okay,
Who seconded, yeah.
I did.
And I abstain.
Sorry, did we have any discussion or are we ready to? Okay, all those in favor?
Didn't we just do that?
Well, did Rick needs to get the number?
Oh.
5, 6.
Six.
Yes, I believed it had passed, but I wanted to make sure. We need to.
Keep your hands up.
Yeah, keep your hands up.
Don't move, we gotta
everybody.
get your names.
Okay, so the purpose of this meeting is really to discuss the updating the application process. So in your binder, you have the application form.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question about the minutes? I just announced myself, I realized the September minutes are not in there.
Correct, so we took the September minutes, but we didn't have,
Okay.
we didn't have any, we have to provide all materials and everything.
Right, okay. That's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. I just was like, wait. Anyway, yeah.
And for clarification, so all of our meetings are now recorded, so the video recording does go live on the website like within a day or two. So if anyone has a deep desire to review the September meeting, it is available. And we will approve the September meeting minutes at our next. Because all video recordings are available online, we have taken the approach to use a very scaled down version of the meeting minutes because the full discussions are available online. Plus, so that the meeting minute taker can fully participate in the discussion. It's pretty onerous to try to do a very verbatim meeting minute structure.
It's all good.
Okay. Okay. So the purpose of this meeting is really about the application process itself. I think since we're also updating the evaluation tool quantification, it would behoove us to also update the application process. We have the town manager here with a specific request as it relates to the application process. And I will let you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you characterize it as a request. I think it's just opportune that you're looking at the evaluation. I don't know that the form has been evaluated, it changed since the very beginning of its process. So it's an opportunity that, and a question was raised that legitimate on its face, and I thought it was important to at least initiate the discussion. I've had the occasion to speak to folks at the Land Trust who are one of our most frequent applicants, not the only applicant. So, you know, your decisions here obviously affect any applicant, but I think it's appropriate to get their input, given the fact that vast majority of applications come by the land trust. Just on its face, the threshold question is, all of this work, at least in modern history, is based on appraisals, and that's really driven by an internal process I understand that the land trust has had for some time in terms of subscribing to national standards and adopting their own requirements to require appraisals to justify a purchase price. To the extent that we're using public funds to at least advance a part of the purchase price, it's not an unreasonable request to have an appreciation for how do we justify the use of the request and then the ultimate use of public funds. Here to date, I don't recall ever seeing appraisals. I do recall there being occasions in the past where approvals have been granted at this level, even at the council level, and then the deal didn't have to close because ultimately it didn't appraise out and meet your policy guidelines, which I think is proof positive that there's a system in place and it works. I think your policy, as I recall, provides some leeway as much as 10% above, given.
Max of 10%.
Right, and I don't know that's a uniquely local preference. I think that's something that, again, is a national kind of standard, if you will, which makes perfect sense because all deals are different. And I've done enough real estate transactions to appreciate the nuances of appraisals. There is certainly science and data driven that drive it, but there's also a level of professional art and at the end of the day, a property is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. Let's face it. So I think the opportunity for at least a discussion point is, can we or should we require appraisals or some other sort of justification for purchase price, which at least being asked of the town as part of the application process. So the question was raised to me in late August. It was addressed to the council last night as part of public comment as well. So I think it's just opportunity we take a moment to talk about it. If you don't do it now, let's just take advantage of the fact that I'm looking at the application generally. One of the complicating factors, and I think our colleagues from the Land Trust will expand upon this, is we're not the client in this case, they are. And so their contract is with a private independent appraiser. That contract has its own terms. At least with the instance case, that contract was signed and the product was delivered, so we had to live with the terms of that contract. It's possible that you could negotiate those terms going forward to allow it to be shared either widely or with some level of discretion, if you will. But that's a point that we certainly ought to touch on as well, is that when something is received by the town, it generally is a public record and therefore available for public inspection. I think in certain cases, the law does give us the ability to shield documents or protect them from public view. I think that kind of defeats the request that's in front of us. The interest is let the public see it and suppose let the decision makers also appreciate those details as well. So that is a long-winded way of saying, at least I'd like to have a discussion about that.
So I want to refer everybody back to Appendix K in the binder, and also Nicole has it up. So right now we asked the current assessed value and the recent appraised value if applicable. So what we're discussing is how we might change the process in that sort of area of the application process. It obviously is much more detailed than that. We're not just talking about line item changing, but what role we feel comfortable as a committee related to appraisal documents and what would be required of an applicant.
Worth noting, it's not lost to me, there's certain transactions that probably don't rise to the level of commissioning a separate independent appraisal, so having an absolute requirement doesn't necessarily make sense. But I suspect most of the sales do have an appraisal to back it up. Punch. Just as an aside, the assessed value, I suppose, is an interesting data point. I don't know that it really relates. Someone will use that when it proves their point, but the assessor's techniques of developing value are far different from market. I say that they're supposed to be as close to market as possible. What we know from our own personal experience, they often lag behind and they don't appreciate the nuances of a property, whereas a appraisal will, by its nature, really understand the particulars of a property rather than this mass system that the appraisal assessor uses. So, take that with a grain of salt. It might still be an interesting data point, but I don't think it's something you should use as a decision making point.
Right.
I don't believe we
I don't think we have.
ever have.
I think it probably is confusing that to include it, because I think it just presents some differences.
Easy enough. We don't use it.
It's actually, you're right, there are now possibly, and in the future, probably more frequently. Going to be acquisition opportunities that do not rise to a level where the full-blown appraisal is that important or relevant, especially if we were gonna do like a small local park through the town, where the town itself, community service might be the applicant.
Sure.
So for that, something like that, an appraisal wouldn't be necessary. The assessed value, though, it's not really that informative, but it is so easy to acquire. You don't have to commission anybody to go get it. It's available. It's on the
So
town.
maybe it's something that this staff produces for your benefit, but it's not a requirement of the applicant. I don't know if there's a distinction or a difference.
I think it can also be challenging because we can sometimes get parts of a parcel. So if you have the assessed value for the parcel,
Yes.
and then we're considering a piece of the parcel, like it loses all meaning.
Yeah, backland is sort of front land. Yeah, it gets very confusing very quickly. And probably not helpful.
It's also, as a matter of practice, if you go through the last dozen or so applications, I think part of the application process is we want to see a budget. We want to see how much the applicant is putting in, how much the town's gonna put in, other funding sources. And my recollection is that I'm not gonna say all of them, but my recollection was that in many of them, we have an appraised value that is included in the budget. And we do rely on that appraisal to a great extent. We know that it isn't always as accurate as we would love it to be, but we do see it. So I gather what you're suggesting, Tom, is that we have documents, more than just a representation, that this is the appraised value, this is what the appraiser says it's worth. But are you thinking that maybe we should have the document or some documentation as?
Yeah,
part
I
of
think
our
that's a
request?
reasonable extension of, if you're asking for that number as part of your application, you ought to have the source document that supports it. Having said that, not many of us can pick up an appraisal and make good sense of it, let's be honest. There's a lot of important nuances that need to be interpreted, that need to be explained or justified, that often don't come through on a printed page, frankly.
So I do think that we should require a budget. That's not currently part of the process. So I do think that we should require a budget, and I think that we, PCLB, should outline what we want included in that budget. And I think regardless, if we request the appraisal value, I don't know that we would require it. Because there could be a small park that doesn't, that it is town property, that doesn't rise to that level.
Well, Tom, let me ask you this, if we put in our application process that a appraisal documentation or the copy of the appraisal itself is required as part of the package, would we then be able to, on a case-by-case, waive that requirement if the situation wasn't really up to that level?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me an applicant can choose to do an appraisal or not to support their application. If they haven't, it doesn't exist. So my only point is don't absolutely require it. If one was prepared as part of the application process, then it begs the question, can we see the source document?
I've got Karen.
I guess
for
I-
your Question.
Sorry, I think
Oh.
Karen's trying to.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was listening to the conversation. I just had more of a question. I mean, obviously, this is a request that's coming from the residents. That, as Tom said, it seems somewhat reasonable to at least have a discussion around. I wonder if an appraisal is done, is there a way to say, an appraisal has been submitted, but it remains confidential? So we could say maybe to the residents, like, we understand that, we can't globally share an appraisal, but we have created this Parks and Conservation Land Board, and part of their job is to confidentially review the appraisal.
Possibly. I think it falls to the FOIA laws and what is a public record. It really begs the question, what is confidential, what's protected in that document such that it's not a public record?
While I appreciate the discussion about this, it would be my assumption that the town council would be requesting that if they wanted that. And that we have in here a number, we have in here what they praised, and we discuss it usually in the recommendation letter. And that if that's something that the town council requires, that they can, because there are rules about councils going into executive section if there's confidential information, and the applicant could easily say, yes, we have it, to the town council, and they could go into executive session and see that. But I don't think this board has the experience or the expertise to even evaluate it. So, me looking at this number of whatever, 130,000, and I would say, I just went in and I looked at 4 applications that actually have the appraised value. So a lot of them do have it. So we've been using it, yes. Yes, so anyway, that's my feelings about it, but again, Tom, you might know better. I just don't feel like this committee, I think it just bogs down the process of this committee.
I think I agree with you 100%. We're not gonna be, to me, we're not trying to be in a position to evaluate or well, we'll say evaluate the assessed value. What I think the public is asking for, which I think is reasonable, is have we seen says somebody's seen an appraisal, some summary of appraisal that verifies that number? To me, that's a legitimate question.
But who should see that? Should that be
Right.
this committee, or should it be the committee that's actually approving which
Right.
is the town council?
Right, I agree.
And in my viewpoint, it's not necessarily this committee. We're trusting the applicant to provide accurate information. And I think it's the council's responsibility, fiduciary responsibility, to make sure that number is valid before they say, yes, we're gonna give this money.
Sue, I appreciate your point. You may choose as a group not to concern yourself with the details of appraisal, but I think this is the point to be clear what the expectation of the applicant is.
Mhm.
How you choose to use it, if at all, is a different matter.
Yeah.
I'm interested in having a conversation more, and I don't know the answer to this, is what contained within an appraisal document is confidential, should be protected and would be harmful.
Well, and that's
So,
why I
yeah.
invited the Scarborough Land Trust, because we as a committee have no background in appraisals. Like, I'll speak for myself. I have no background whatsoever in conservation appraisals, and so I have no interest in evaluating a professional document for its veracity. But I'm gonna turn it over to the Scarborough Land Trust, because they do have practical experience with appraisal documents that if any member has experience, they can chime in, but I think it's really the Land Trust that knows the ins and outs.
Yeah, first, I wanna kind of bring the discussion back up a little bit about appraisals in general. Because there's a lot of confusion, I think, with the public between assessed value and appraised value. We're required by the standards and practices that we work under, and this is consistent throughout the entire land trust community in the country. And it's also true for pretty much every government that purchases land, whether state, federal, or local, to acquire a third-party independent appraisal from a certified appraiser that can do work. For example, conservation easements kind of have their own requirements for appraisers. Vacant land for purchase. They go through training to do this, and they have to have continuing education to do this. This is not someone that, we influence. That's the whole part of being a third-party independent appraiser. So we hire them. They have very specific contracts through their professional association that basically has to indicate who the client is. And they can only talk to that client about that appraisal. So that's, and I'll turn it over in a second to Scott, because he's talked to one of the appraisers that we use quite a bit about this to make sure we understand where they're coming from. But I think it's very realistic to want an appraisal for projects. There are only a very few exceptions where we don't need an appraisal when we do a project. And to be honest, I can't see any of those actually us coming to the town for funding. There are a couple of projects we've done for various reasons that we haven't needed an appraisal because we had other justification of the number that we did outside with no town money whatsoever. But those are very rare. So appraisals are very accepted. They are meant to be a market reflection of the price at that time. And appraisers have to take into a whole account of different factors. It's a very complicated process. And that is about a private property. So I think there are some privacy concerns in terms of, what they're evaluating, what information they're putting in the appraisal, whether that's legally private or not. It can potentially impact landowners wanting to put their land in conservation if they think they are going to be on the public stage. And I have seen that in other places. In some of the places I've worked, it's not uncommon, especially at the state level, to require the appraisals are part of the package. But often there are rules in place that that is not part of the public dissemination out. So the appraisals are considered confidential information and aren't distributed to the public. I don't know specifically about Maine's laws, and that would have to be a legal opinion. But I think that some of our concerns, I'll turn this over to Scott and let him address specific comments that we've gotten from appraisers.
So I just wanted to start with kind of giving you the language that's in our contract with the appraiser that we work with regarding this topic. And so I'm just going to read to you what is in our contract. And this is his standard contract that he does with every client that he works with. He says all information presented in the appraisal is submitted for the exclusive use of the client and named intended users. It is intended for their private use only. The appraisal report may not be used or relied upon by any third parties for any purpose whatsoever. Any party who uses or relies upon the information in the appraisal report without the preparer's written consent does so at his or her own risk. Possession of the appraisal report or any copy thereof does neither carry with it the right of publication, nor may any portion of this report be reproduced. No part of the appraisal report, especially the conclusions of value, our identity, or that of the firm with which we are associated, meaning their company, may be disseminated to the public through advertising, public relations, news or sales media, or any other public means of communication without our prior written consent. Failure to comply with this provision in full shall be deemed a breach of contract, and the company we work with may seek damages that may incur through any legal or equitable means available without waiver. So that's his language. Now, I looked through some other appraisals that, over the last couple of years from different appraisers, and they don't have the exact same language as that, but they have language very much like that, and they're very specific about the line about this is not to be disseminated to the public. They use the same language as him, so it must be an industry standard language. May not be disseminated to the public through advertising, public relations, news, or any other public means of communication. So, I mean, what this means to me is that appraisals are not public documents. They're not intended to be public documents. They're not intended to be reviewed by the public for public review. It's really the way that, and this is not something that I created or SLT created. This is something, and it's not even really something that our appraiser created. This is like an industry standard. They have industry standards and practices that they put in place that all appraisers abide by, and this is one of those things. And it's because really the intent of the appraisal is for it's a contract, or it's a relationship between the client and the appraiser, and that's it. You can add intended users to be able to view the document, but even with those intended users, it's not intended to then also be distributed from that by that intended user. That intended user only has the right to view the document. They do not have the right to reproduce it, disseminate it, give it out, anything like that, just as much as the client does not have that right to do that. And so it's not, I know that the word transparency gets thrown around a lot. It's not a matter of transparency in this case. It's really a matter of abiding by industry standards. I mean, this is how appraisals work. And I think that some of that comes from, well, first of all, some of that comes from the fact that, like what Andrew was gearing at, is that these are very complex documents. These are done by trained, licensed individuals who have had years of experience doing these documents. They're very complex. There's a lot of factors that go into it. There's a lot of different methods that they use to come up with the value, and it is their opinion of the value. And so really, it's not anybody can just do this work. And I think in the same respect, kind of the flip side of that is that not really anybody can look at an appraiser and review it and determine, was the method valid? Was the opinion of the appraiser justified in this case? Is it something that the appraiser, did the appraiser mess up in that area? So I think that, I think what maybe one step to do in this case is really maybe what we can think about is like, what is the town's intent here? Like, is the town's intent to verify the number so that they, the town knows that if the land trust, or if the Maine Farmland Trust, or even if the town comes to the PCLB because the town wants to buy a piece of property, can they verify that there is an appraisal, it was done by a licensed appraiser, and that there's a value of judgment that was given by this third-party appraiser, and that is the basis for which the application is coming in for funding? Is that what the intent is from the town, or is the intent to actually review the appraisals and determine and judge whether the methods and the opinion of the appraiser is correct or not?
No, I think. I think it's the first one. We just need to make sure it's confirmed that this appraisal was done and this is the. I
So,
don't think any of us prepared or qualified or want to go into the details of questioning the appraisal. But I created a new application question. One was, I said, was there a professional appraisal done? Who did it? And what was the value? But the way I read what or interpret what you just said, we can't even use that person's name.
Yeah, I'm wondering if
Right, or-
was it done by a license accredited, I don't know what the professional affiliation,
Yeah,
like, it could be a checkbook.
Conservation,
Yeah, was it-
certified conservation appraiser,
Yeah,
Yes.
without the name, and I think the date,
date.
because
And
I think real
Can we-
estate in Scarborough.
now,
Is it true, excuse me, is it true that we can't use the person's name on this?
I mean, it seems like it says no part of the appraisal report or the identity of the firm may be disseminated to the public.
Okay.
Or, I mean, I think it's also to any non-intended user.
Karen, Sorry, we keep
Hi.
skipping for you.
Well, no, and I don't want to interrupt the conversation. I will just say personally, as I watch this conversation play out, for me, this feels more like a town council discussion because this is based for me around fiscal responsibility. So I will just say off the cuff, the contract that Scott just read, it says that with written consent. So if they said we can't get funding from the town, we need you to, give written consent for someone to review it. I do feel like that's something, and I wonder if they do that with other people, because if you're applying for a loan at a bank, you have to prove what you're applying for and that it's worth it. And so I think in my mind, as this conversation plays out, we're the bank in this situation. And so I think I will just, and I would love for Tom to chime in, but I do feel like at this point, it's the fiscal responsibility that I feel as a counselor that is kind of spurring me to be involved in this conversation, because, we are using taxpayer money and we should be justifying how we're using it and that we're using it responsibly. And so I feel like the process that you guys do is very different, where you're just sort of accepting the value that they've given to you, and you're more evaluating, the environmental benefits that a property is giving. So I just, before we kind of go sideways with it, and I also don't want to suck up your whole meeting with the conversation.
Well, sorry, Tom,
I
did you have
just-
a response before we go to Sue?
I have a lot of responses. Yeah, I don't know who, well, the language that Scott just read, I was not privy to that, but that is extremely strongly worded, one-sided. We've commissioned appraisals, granted they're for different purposes, but those are public documents that are shared widely. So I think it's possible, it's a matter of negotiating with your chosen appraiser, right? I suspect you've got to live with the contract documents, look backward, but that's not to say there can't be a different arrangement going forward. Karen, with all due respect, I hear what you say, but it is the council's ultimate responsibility for fiduciary matters. Having said that, I would never expect the council to dive deep and understand the nuances and validate. I think this is one of those things where you hire an independent, trained, accredited professional and you trust their opinion. You don't question their methodologies. If you are, you should choose another appraiser. So in any event, I don't see anyone pouring through this document. I think it serves a purpose to validate a number that's been put forward to us and nothing more. Just a final thought, I think there may be some middle ground. I don't have to check with legal, but there may be a possibility of requiring it, but for the exclusive use of this group, should you choose to look at it in the council. And I know that will not likely satisfy members of the public who would love to pour over every single word. But I think it serves a purpose of saying, folks, trusted folks, are privy to the details. And it goes to the trust of the process, and I know sometimes it's a challenge, but I think that is far better than nothing at all.
Sue
Okay,
was
so-
next.
Yeah, so
Sorry, were you finished?
I agree
Yep.
with what Tom's saying. And I wrote down that perhaps part of this we talked about is just verifying the number, whether or not we do that or the town council. In what we don't know is after we make a recommendation, what happens afterwards? We know that the council approves it, but then, the town staff is the one that works to write the check with whoever the land trust, or if there's grants or there's different funds. And so it would be the council's, role to, let the administration know, or, Tom and his staff, yes, we need to verify that number. And the council could even put that in their motion. If the verified number is it could be in their motion. And then, I don't think that, I know if in the end, it can become a part of the record. In other words, if we vote yes, and if the town council votes yes, and now that appraisal can be distributed, maybe, that's the other, I don't know.
Can I just, one final comment? You should all be proud. My 17 years working with the town, what I've observed until as recent as last night is that the council is extremely confident in your abilities, that when a matter gets through your process, it gets to council. I won't say it's not questioned, but I think there's a high degree of confidence. So to the extent that we can continue that and have this work done at this level, I think, Aaron, you may disagree, but, I think it should be done here. I don't expect the council, to want to be interested or to be interested in delving into the particulars. They have to have trust and confidence in the process before it gets to them.
Can I add something? I don't think the town council's any more capable of evaluating appraisals than we are. Secondly, in banking, which was my background for many, many years, if somebody brings us an appraisal and they want us to lend money against it, either I know the appraiser and I trust them, or I know the accountant and I trust them. But if I don't know the accountant and I don't trust them, we don't do the transaction. If I don't know the appraiser and I don't trust them, we don't do the transaction. And if I have questions, I am not going to look at a CAT scan and try to come up with an analysis of it. I'm going to get my own appraiser, look at this. Are you comfortable with this? And he'll say, yes, this is fine, this is professional. And then we develop a level of trust. And that's what drives these transactions is trust. If I don't trust it, I'm not in a position to go through and tear through the details and evaluate it.
Can I just add, absolutely, we can add intended users to appraisals. Again, there's gonna be certain restrictions on how the intended users can distribute that information and what they can do with it. But if you look at some large state funding programs around the country, that give out money for land conservation, that have paid staff that accept these applications and get appraisals, their intended users. Even that staff do not review the appraisals. They hire independent appraisers that are in the community to review those appraisals.
Yeah, it's exactly what I said.
Right, the fundamental thing is they have the appraisal, whether they review it, whether they understand it is secondary. The threshold question is the appraisal provided to that reviewing authority as part of the application? The answer is yes.
Yes, and they have to
With the
be added
limited scope.
as a.
Right, with a limited scope. It's not necessarily a public record, but it's available to the reviewing authority.
I have a question for Scott. In that language that you read to us, is there anything that would suggest to you that the conclusions of the appraisal are also subject to those same limitations about dissemination? Can we use the bottom line number in, as we've been doing, we put the number in out, put the number in the application in your particular instance? Are you able to say the appraisal came back at $4 million or whatever?
Yes, I can give you that information, which is what I've been doing. I mean,
Would it serve the purpose of documentation as far as the ability of the public to trust the work of this committee? To have not a copy of the entire appraisal, but a certified attestation from the appraiser that says, this is the appraisal, I've done it. It conforms to industry standards and professional protocols, and here's the bottom line number, and sign that. Can that serve as the documentation that we're looking for?
Actually, I mean, the application could be a little more formal by having an affidavit or some sort of
Would that
greater
be,
weight authority that,
Would that be-
perjury of law or whatever it is. I certify that all the information contained in here is accurate.
certified affidavit, would that be impossible or inconvenient to obtain? Speaking on behalf of any applicant, not just yourselves, but envision somebody else that comes to us.
Right, I mean, each appraiser, of course, is gonna follow their own standards, but I mean, I think. That would be probably very doable for most. There's only a handful of appraisers that really do this kind of work in the state. So it's not a very big community, but yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to bring that to whatever appraiser we use and say this is a requirement for us.
It's just like when you look at financial statements and they've been audited by a CPA firm. The CPA firm signs a letter in the front saying that these present fairly and blah, 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 blah. And they sign their name to it. And then if they don't, they suffer significant financial liability. They get sued, and that's what happens if there's fraud. But this is what you're talking. Are you saying that the appraiser is going to defraud you?
No, I'm just saying that
No,
there might be an
I was-
appraiser that says, I don't wanna sign a separate document, and then we have to find a different appraiser.
Yeah, or potentially a workaround would be that the applicant, trust, for example, would have some sort of sign off at the end of their application that certifies to the correctness and accuracy of all the information contained herein. So,
They put themselves on the hook.
I don't know what the consequence of that is, but it gives everyone a heightened level that, yes, we did get the appraisal and all the other information is true and correct.
I think that seems very reasonable.
Can I ask, have you ever had to or felt you needed to call in somebody to appraise the appraiser?
No, no, because I think that goes back to what was mentioned before, that we have a working relationship, like. I trust them because I know they have experience, they do good work, they have experience, they've got a great, they've got resume, they're known around the state by other land trusts. They have a reputation. It's like I do with any consultant that I hire, whether it's an appraiser, a surveyor, an attorney, an environmental reviewer. I have to trust that they're gonna do the good work for us. And again, if I don't trust them, that they can't do the work, I'm not hiring them. I'm not gonna hire. Right?
It's not uncommon to have two independent appraisers look at the same piece of property, come up with their value, and that's not to say either one is right or wrong. Right. That's the art. It's not simply looking at, and it's probably not at all looking at comparable sales. This is a real niche thing. So it's not looking at single family home sales in Scarborough. Remember the appraised value, it's very, very nuanced, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah, I when I looked around at different appraisers around this area, I called a number of them and they said, no, I don't do vacant land because it's too complex to figure out the comparables for it. I stick with the, half acre, single family home that I do for banks because it's easy. There's a ton of comparables, I can crank them out. So it's a small pool of people that are actually even willing to do this work because it is a complex process.
So what I've heard is that we would add a section to the application recommending an appraisal. And I'm choosing recommended versus required because there may be instances where we don't require an appraisal, but we can discuss
I
that.
don't think you make that choice. Let the applicant choose, as you indicated, if the appraisal is done, what
Yeah.
the appraised value.
And then,
Appraised value with that.
and then an affidavit from the applicant certifying that the information provided in the overall application is correct.
Would that be enough to satisfy? I think, that's just different than what's being asked for, but I think it's better than what we have.
You could say and or an attestation from the appraiser. So in other words, if your appraiser is willing to do it, that's great.
That'd be even better, to have something
Yeah.
on their letterhead stating a
Yeah.
value. It doesn't need to go into the detail of methodology. It's not the report. It's simply the end results. That would, I think, be even better because it's removed from the applicant. It's the independent.
We
opinion.
could put in paragraph preferred.
Yes.
Or in parentheses, yeah.
Yes. And for me, a letter from the appraiser with the number and a date. Okay, good. Check.
But is that, would the appraiser do that? I mean, to me, that's the most simple solution to this whole problem.
Yes, I would feel confident that he would do that. I have to ask him. I can't speak for him at this point. But I think that he would be willing to do that.
Because that's what, I think that the community is curious and has the right to know that we are following the right process and doing this professionally. And I think that would solve 99% of the requests.
Yeah, I mean,
Because the statements that have been made at meetings, at least last night, it's made it sound like we do this willy-nilly thing, come up with a value out of the blue and it's self-serving, blah, blah, blah. And so I think we need to educate the residents of the process we use And then we get professionally certified appraisers, this is the person, here's the number. And I think that will solve 99% of the issue.
So I'm not sure what has been discussed in the past about actually whether we're gonna put a huge document together called the acquisition evaluation process like we have, the binder. If we're gonna, update that and
Yes.
actually,
Yes, we-
Yes,
then perhaps that's a section that would talk about appraisals and just a
That's-
whole
yeah.
section about explaining what they are, how they do, why we trust them, and now we're gonna get that would be an update to the whole, and, that would help, I think. My guess is that some comments, they probably didn't necessarily look at this front page that says recent appraised value. Cause my guess is that they think we're not getting real official appraisals or something, so
Who
that's
said
good.
that?
Yeah.
Residents?
Concerned citizens,
Can I make a comment about concerned citizens?
if it's constructive,
When we put this all together, and, I'm phasing out of this, so it's a wonderful time to talk about this kind of thing. When we put this all together, the intention was to take public funds, invest in land, using applicants that were co-working with us on this, and would actually own the land, so the town wasn't on the hook for maintenance and stewardship and all that stuff. The purpose of this group, and then the review by the town council, the review by this group, the application process, the review by this group, and the review by the council. The purpose of that was because the public can't evaluate every one of these problems. Public can't do it. Public can't evaluate most of the things the town council does in their meeting. Town council is doing that because the public can't do it on an individual basis. It would take 100 years and it would never get done. So, the reality is, while the public has interest and the public has a right to care, there's at some point a need for a committee like this to accept a really good application, solid application. But we want to make sure that application is the way it's stuff on it, doing appraisals, et cetera. And then there's a process this group goes through. We have established that process. We can update it. We're already updating the quantitative piece pretty dramatically. And then finally, there's the review by the council. Now, when an interested person from the public steps up and says, well, I don't think there's anything for me, I don't think they're spending any time on this. I apologize, but that's irrelevant. That is irrelevant. What is relevant is, are we able to step forward as a town and say, no, we have a process. Do you want to see it? We can walk you through the whole thing. We'll get the book out.
well, I think
right, we're in agreement, and that's what we're saying. Let's summarize our process in the updated process. And let's have a document that says, yes, a certified conservation appraiser was done, here is the person's name, maybe the license number, if that's appropriate, and here's the value.
I think it's unfortunate that the individual who was speaking last night.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate, but it's the reality, Scott.
I know that's just an education process.
That's what I'm saying.
The information is there. Let's make sure that people have that information.
But just in this instance, just to put it in context, the questions were quite detailed. In fact, the questioner was doing their own back of the napkin, doing their own armchair appraisal.
Right.
Using assessed value as a piece of data, using the appraised price, offering some observations that it should be discounted because it's backland. I mean, these are all the factors that go into it. I would argue that the person raising these questions is no more qualified than anyone around this room. That's one person's opinion. So it wasn't that, oh, you guys are just passing it off. This person was actually taking the time to offer their own opinion about it.
Sure, no, I understand. Is that what we want to do on every application? Do we want to? put it out?
No, we're just saying we just need to,
Professional advice.
right, the process is to request an appraisal, get the appraisal, get confirmation the appraisal is done, and confirm the number. That's all we're saying we want to do.
Because I'm hearing a lot more than that. I'm hearing about evaluation of appraisals.
No, we said we're not doing that.
Hearing it discussed. That's silly. We need people to be able to trust that a professional evaluation is done.
Maggie, then no.
So I think, is it twice a year we do by the numbers?
once.
Once a year. So we do a kind of a community educational thing. We could include a section on, number of that includes a description, a 5-point description of these, of our process and our documentation to support
Yes.
it. And always include that as part of the numbers. So there's no question about, nobody's gonna look at this book, and as a.
I do think it's important to have. the-
Yes,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about community education.
Yes. So related to that, so that's part of the reason for updating the application form and the book. But you bring up a very important point. We also need to simplify the process on the website. I think the communication presentation last night, like, we need to better communicate out the high level information and direct the folks who want to get into the nitty gritty, that the nitty gritty exists and here it is, and that's also available on the website. But yes, the the public facing piece is not like, here's 35 pages for you to
Right,
read.
exactly.
Here's the 5.
Here are the 5 key points.
here are
And we
the
do this
five-
for every
every-
project.
yes.
This is our process.
We need to do a better job with that, and I think that the appropriate place for that is on our landing page. Which is why you should print it, Nicole printed it out. So I think we should, it's like, so for example, we've got by the numbers, then we've got the binder part of the process. And then the application, that we would replace the acquisition evaluation process with that concise
Description of
description of the process
process and I think it's documentation.
in documentation. for that.
This is with every project.
Yes.
Are these?
What goes next?
Can I say something? Are these packages that we get in this committee for like this none such river preserve, which seem to be extremely well done? Are these available for public inspection or is it
Yes.
just
Yeah.
for us?
Yes.
Those are all attachments with the.
So if somebody has
Meeting
a
agendas.
question about what is your process, what is your methodology, what are you looking at? I'm sorry, but the way I look at it, this should be enough.
Yeah, let's not go there. It's not enough. So, I mean,
It's not
we,
enough.
we wish it was, but it's not. The reality is people are looking for more confirmation and that's what we should be focusing.
Well,
Well,
It's not a
can I
perfect-
just address this because it came up last.
No, it hasn't.
No.
Yeah, and my question actually is, I think, relevant to this, what you're asking. The dates and the date of the appraisal seems to me that is relevance relative to the kind of a comfort in the quality of the appraisal. Do we, or should, if the answer is no, have a expiration date of that appraisal value where it needs to be freshened by this point?
We're not qualified to set that date, I don't think.
Well, we have requirements that we work under, in terms of the appraisal. It's a little bit, depends upon, who the funders are, how the deal is structured, or if it's a donation or things like that, but typically our appraisals are within 6 months of closing. If they go outside a certain time frame, we usually get an update from the appraiser. They don't have to redo the entire appraisal, but they do have to look, make sure that conditions haven't changed. And then they have to basically issue a letter stating that they have reviewed all the pertinent facts and that their evaluation stays the same.
This Sue was suggesting if there's a section, it doesn't have to be more than a paragraph in your binder that sets some expectations that it's probably credential based, but if the appraisal is done, the appraiser must. I don't know what those credentials are, but I'm. This is something readily available, probably something to the timeliness and kind of the appropriateness of the appraisal could be part of those expectations. Just make no mistake, what we're talking about is not gonna satisfy the requester. And that's okay. But I think, it's been a good conversation. I think you're arriving at a good place.
But I think there's
Just 1 second. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
Andrew, we cut him off did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just do want to address, I mean, obviously, people are going to use the information that they think makes their case. There were comments last night. If they had read the application, which was publicly available, they would have known that there was an appraisal. They did not use the appraisal number. They focused on the assessed number. We've already discussed, there's a huge difference between assessed and appraisal. They would have known that the entire property wasn't wetland as it was claimed.
Right.
And so, there's lots of information in there. But you can cherry pick what you want to support your argument. So I think, again, it goes back to process. Is this committee confident in their process? And then is the council confident in the process that PCLB is using? Because that's the only way, you're gonna make sure that you feel, the town, I think, feels comfortable that everything is covered and that it's good use of town funding.
I think there are two issues here. One is, I agree with you, Tom. We'll never satisfy some people because they're gonna just argue about everything. What I really want to satisfy is the realistic expectation that from, let's call it a concerned citizen that doesn't have an axe to grind, that we are using correct information and we confirm that there was an appraisal done and that's the number. If we can do that, I think we are doing our job and we are following our process.
Isn't that what the council does?
No,
No, excuse me, but our job is to evaluate, to accept applications and to evaluate that in such a way that the town council can accept the responsibility for saying we will spend this public money. So the reality is that the council needs to understand that, needs to be able to trust what we are presenting to them, but also have enough information. Things like documentation are given, changing our documentation requirements so that we have more appropriate documentation is, just do it, right? But ultimately, we're talking about a process here, an acquisition evaluation process for spending this bond money.
Mhm.
And it's very important that we all understand that the ultimate trust factor here comes from the council. And the council needs to make sure that they're getting from us the information they need. Now, in one case here, we're talking about documentation on appraisal. Absolutely, right? Let's do what the council needs to be able to trust what's coming from this group. But ultimately, that's what has to happen for us to be able to utilize the bond money. The council needs to be able to trust that our process is working and is effective, and because they're the representative of the public, not us.
Yeah, I would say there's two things the council looks at. They don't necessarily rubber stamp, but I think they have developed a high degree of confidence in the evaluation tools and the robustness of your process. So your recommendation holds a lot of weight. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, they also need to validate that the requested use of public funds complies with the voter approval. So it's kind of, in my mind, there's kind of two pieces that the council is concerned with. And this is all about continuing to advance a high degree of confidence in this body as an advisory group to the council, doing the work and coming up with a recommendation that they could be comfortable with.
So,
Oh,
okay.
I think
Yeah, I just want to clarify because I do think everything should go through this board. A town council doesn't want to be reviewing appraisals. I don't think anyone wants to be evaluating the process. I think when I look at it, we have an application that we receive and they're very thorough. What the resident pointed out was we have documentation submitted to support everything in this application except for the appraisal. And I think so they're saying you have proof for everything else to prove that you've made all these marks, except, we just have an appraised value that's just kind of thrown on there with no supporting documentation. The conversation I was saying to have with council is, does council want to require an appraisal or not? I don't think that's the question I want to ask them. I think every situation is different, but I do appreciate that the specific request was, and I think these residents are looking at the whole packet and thoroughly through it. And I think for them, there was a gap, basically saying, here's a gap in your, where you have an appraised value, but no proof showing it. How we go about proving that, I think is going to be up to others. I think you guys need to move forward with your process and then come forward with your new application. And then at that time, the council can say, okay, I'm fine with no appraisal. I'm okay with a letter, or I want it. I think that's the conversation that will come when we come up with, I would imagine, the whole new application process and everything.
And make a motion.
Yes.
I make a motion that we include a paragraph or two about our expectations for appraisals. And that we not mandate them. However, if they exist, that we require and describe in our date of approval and license number.
There's a second?
No
Name of
second.
the appraiser.
The name of the appraisal.
Oh, and the name of the appraiser. Oh, yeah, if you want to add things, that's fine.
I totally agree, but I'm not gonna second the motion, because I want to take a different.
Okay.
Well, we have to have the second to have the,
We won't have to vote then.
well, then we have a discussion.
I just think we're wasting time.
Right,
That's all.
Right,
And
we're
and
going
that's,
around in circles, I agree.
I feel like we're going around in circles and
Right.
we've spent an hour on this and
This is your the motion, just advance.
that's basically what I'm
I
saying.
second the motion.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll second that. If we're open for discussion
Now it's
and,
time for
and
discussion.
modification. Yeah.
So yes, we can, now we have discussion and folks can offer amendments.
I'm gonna suggest, Tom, does the town have the ability and interest to prepare a draft affidavit? Cause we asked the list.
Sure, the affidavit may be too strong. I think it may be just
An attestation.
attestation at the end of the application. Kind of certifies to all the information contained in it.
We have anybody that would be lawyers or would.
Oh, yes.
So,
But that
That-
might be, with all due respect, that might be a separate conversation with the motion, as I understand it.
Well,
It could be competitive with yours.
if you're, if
compatible.
if appraisers are willing to attest to a number,
Right.
we're done.
I think that's true.
But that,
And if not, if the applicant is willing to attest to a number, we're done.
It's not just a number, it's all the information. you-
No, I agree. No, or all the information. But what I'm saying is that let's not get bogged down and,
So would you restate your?
oh, no.
motion? So that I write it down. Move
no, I have
to
a
add
question.
Paragraph.
I have a question about that wording. I apologize. The saying that appraisals aren't required. I think from our responsibility to the public, I think we should require an appraisal unless there are circumstances wherein an appraisal cannot be done effectively or something.
Or the value is de minimis such that it doesn't rise to the level.
Yes.
What is,
So my question is, can we as a group get help with language? I don't think we are qualified to do the legalese of it. But if we pass it in spirit, can we get help with the final language, just so we're not debating affidavit version?
Yes.
so I was suggesting a revision to the.
Yes,
motion,
exactly.
Simply saying that an appraisal in our
Is required.
documentation, an appraisal is required unless whatever wording is.
Yes,
uh,
that's what I'm
is-
saying,
Is,
that we can have a caveat, but we don't have to have the
So we'll
precise.
deal with an amendment to the
Yes.
motion. I'm struggling. trying to
Yes,
find-
yes.
I'll withdraw my motion.
No, it's fine. 'Cause we can't do this in this group anyway. The exact wording of what's gonna be signed, we can't do that
Right.
here. The spirit is, we were gonna ask if an professional appraiser was done, who the person is, maybe their license number and the value. And you're gonna get attestation
date.
of that and the date of that information as part of the application process.
Sue, would it be accurate to describe your motion as Sue moved to explore a paragraph that will require an attestation that the appraisal has been done knowing that there'll be wording coming back and when the time comes to actually approve the paragraph and the wording.
Yeah, we would
So that-
approve the
that-
paragraph.
Yeah,
So for my purposes, trying to write down what your
Oh,
motion
that's
is.
fine. That it can come back to this committee and, yeah, because I assume, yeah.
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 Explore a paragraph that will
state
add.
the expectations regarding appraisals. I think
Yes.
that would be something
Okay.
that I want. That would state the expectations regarding appraisals.
Yeah.
And that would include Doug's comment that there may be exceptions, that we would codify some potential exceptions.
Potential
So
exception.
your motion is to explore a paragraph that will state the expectations regarding requiring an appraisal.
It's fine.
Seconded by Zan.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you feel
Well,
that,
I have a comment if you don't mind. It's related to this motion. I'm related. I missed the remarks from the requester last night. But Doug, you said, do we want to do this every time for every application? And my answer to that is certainly. I think manners are important and it's really good to phrase things in a non-offensive and in a helpful way. But I absolutely trust the work we've done here and I welcome questions. We start our meetings off with a public comment period. By all means, come in, ask the questions, ask questions until you are convinced that we're all wrong or are convinced that we've done good work here. So I totally invite that. I totally invite those kinds of questions. I think it's really, really important, especially in this day and age where we don't trust anybody, to ask those questions and get answers. And I'm not an expert at looking through an appraisal, but I certainly have a lot of questions. I ask them at every applicant, every time. I'm fine with it. Bring them on, bring on I don't mind being challenged. I don't mind being asked. I think it's really important. That's my comment.
I apologize. I need to make a comment here. This is a public meeting.
I picked on you because you're my long
But I
time.
didn't say what you just said.
Okay.
I did not say there was an issue with the public questioning what we do. I said we cannot have the public do the entire evaluation of every property. Whoever in the public wants to do it. That is what I said.
Yes, you did say that.
Thank you.
are there,
I was just wondering, it seems like the intent of the motion is to talk about this attestation requirement or exploring an attestation. Should the motion, it doesn't seem like the motion reflects the idea that there would be an attestation for the appraisal. I'm just wondering.
Originally it did. Yes.
I'm just wondering if it needs to be clarified, because it sounds very vague, the motion that we're gonna explore
I
appraisal stuff.
said letter of attestation or certified affidavit, but
well, I see it as two parallel, like we're going to clarify our appraisal requests / requirements. And I believe a second part of a revision to the application would be an attestation. I think it's gonna be similarly vague, where we get the correct language, that we're gonna get an applicant to sign off on the application, attesting to all of the information submitted as part of the application.
It's helpful. I don't see that this motion, as much detail as you can articulate it better, is final. What it really does is direct staff to take a turn at this document to bring back something that we hope is in keeping with your expectation.
Right.
For your review and hopefully final approval at your meeting.
So the wording that I've written and will write in the draft minutes. Sue made a motion to explore. I think it means adding a paragraph that will state the expectations requiring an appraisal. And
attestation.
Well, I think you want that in the single, fair, yeah, we want to do it.
Fine,
same
why
way.
not?
Yeah, yeah.
an attestation. Of
To be,
and
to be
will
handled
the
by staff.
staff then infer that work is being asked to run that out.
Yeah, so be it.
Are we ready for a vote?
We have other things to talk about.
All those in favor? I show that as unanimous.
Great, we'll take a turn at producing this language for your consideration at your next meeting.
And our next meeting is November 13th. And at that meeting, we will also be receiving a beta demonstration of the application from the app, the evaluation app from Viewshed. So we have a pretty packed meeting in November.
Yeah, to that point, I think it's important that I didn't understand this because I'm really new, but the intent is for us to have a self-service app for the application process and the evaluation, including the GIS information. So instead of us sending this to Micah, we would be doing this ourselves using the application. Seems to make sense to me. We're gonna have to find somebody that's gonna do that. But it seems like it's a good use of the technology, offloading town staff from doing this. I assume he'd still be there to help us through this thing, or whoever would help us through it. But I think it makes sense. So that was the intent of the app. We weren't sure what the app was. Doug and I weren't sure what it was. And that's the intent of the app.
Who would pay for that?
It's part of the consulting project. It was scoped in the
Open space plan.
the open space plan, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so, and we'll have, and Jessica and I were, who else was that? I think just you. We met with the consultants via Zoom. We looked at it. We had some comments. And I think it will be helpful through the process.
So just for housekeeping, I think we'll have the app demonstration first because it's the consultant, and then we'll have the language presentation. Just because I don't want to spend an hour of the consultant's time listening to our
Rumination.
review of the language. So that's sort of what next meeting will be.
It's gonna be perfect, you guys can vote on it right away.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have a question? Oh, okay.
Any other questions for Tom? Was your- Okay, thank you.
Sure, thanks a lot. Comfy chair. Sure.
Cast interest question? Should we also be anticipating any proposals from you guys for the November meeting?
No.
At this time, we have no applications for the November meeting, but I think we do have to explore the possibility of a December meeting, and I would like to schedule our first 2026 meeting because there's a lot left to do, just for the app. I mean, updating the evaluation process, including the app. So I'm gonna jump there just because I know we have some folks who have to leave. Our next meeting is November 13th. Do we want to explore a December meeting, early December meeting, or do we want to schedule our first 2026?
I think I would like to do the summer meeting because I think we need to get through this new process.
So I was under the impression we were losing 2 folks this year, but I've been corrected. We're losing 3. We're losing you.
No, I think I was wrong.
Okay.
Termin's 26.
Okay, I thought you were 26. I was like, not 3.
No, I thought it was. I flipped it up.
Okay. So Doug and Sue roll off, and there was a discussion last night at town council meeting, and the rule stands, so we will be losing Doug and Sue for at least a year. For only a year. So my preference is that we have their input and historical knowledge as we make these updates. So I prefer a December meeting if we can make it work.
Can I ask a question about this process? Because I understand, I think, this concept of an app, and I think it's neat. If it works, it's great. We do need to, I recommend strongly, I recommended this before, that we use the new evaluation process, some of the older properties.
Yes.
I don't think that's something that you want to be doing as a committee, because
Yeah.
the information on these properties has to be pulled out, you know. So it really would be good if say 5 of the older properties, Fuller Farm, Thornton Farm. So avoid some of the, of various sizes, Libby River. Only because that gets you in various parts of the town. We're done using new evaluation tool. So that you have the benchmark, not to compare to the
Right.
old, it's not, it doesn't matter. What matters is what are your benchmark amounts?
Sure, yep.
The presentation next meeting will be on 91 Muzzy Road, the Nonsuch River Preserve, because that we recently evaluated. So they'll be walking through both. And they're testing all 3 of the most recent properties, but yes, we will also do that as a
Just
committee.
3 of those, that's good, yeah. that's
Yeah.
great, Because
So-
their sizes, you know, there's a range there.
Yes. So this is a beta test. They're not presenting the final product to us. This is for us to walk through and understand and request changes. And I think as part of that process, we will do some
I think,
historical.
yeah.
Maybe possible for you to look at Broadstone Farm and then.
Yeah.
Sure.
Easily,
I-
I don't know.
The way I think about it, Doug, is that I think it would be a good learning exercise for whoever on this council is gonna be using the tool to go back and do those properties.
And sure.
And that way they can get up to speed on the process and how the tool works. And we get that data as well.
So what does December look like?
Do we have a November meeting?
We have a November 13th. So November 13th is currently going to be the presentation from Viewshed and this language. So I anticipate that being the entire meetings.
I think we need to talk about the application itself.
That's why we're trying to do December.
Okay, all right.
That's why we're scheduling more meetings.
And I agree totally that the app is. If you're gonna be able to use an app here to review the properties, then need some time to sit here as a group and do some of the older properties, a couple of the older properties, not just the most recent 4 or 5.
Yes.
Right.
Because their size and counts. And that's going to require, I mean, I have no idea how much time it will require. I don't know, you know, how it goes with the app. I don't.
Exactly.
So. I'm really interested in what the app can do. It's allows you to sit here and evaluate properties. That's fantastic.
So what about keeping with the Thursday, the 4th or the 11th?
The 11th is better. Actually, I do a meeting.
11th is better for me.
Let me vote on this, I forget. December 11th at 10 o'clock. We'll add that to the calendar. So last night, Sue and Doug will remain on until a replacement is named, so it's entirely possible that we get a couple months into 2026.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
Yeah,
that's
that was
ready
my
to-
understanding.
The
My
Australia.
understanding is until a replacement is needed, you remain on the board. So let's schedule an early January meeting.
Is it till 12 or 11:30 in November?
We're normally 10 to 11:30 unless we had that situation where it's dual applications.
Yeah.
All right,
I think an hour and a half, it's a big ask, people to take 2 hours out of the middle of their day. So January 2026,
We're keeping with the second Thursday.
that would be January 8th at 10 a.m. That's that part. Sorry, I've thrown the agenda out of. It is almost 11:30, so I just wanted to do a quick update that last night at second reading, expanding Pleasant Hill Preserve again and Nonesuch River Preserve by Scarborough Land Trust were approved, as was what will be the Deering Family Farm. All unanimous, lots of positive, reaction from the council. So, you know, as Tom mentioned, I think there's a lot of confidence in this board and, very happy with our process. We just need some updates and some tweaks and, we're just continuing to evolve with the information, that is provided to us. Karen, did you want to add anything regarding?
No,
council?
I think you pretty much surmised it really well. I think there's a lot of confidence in this board and the process that you go through. And Jessica's done an amazing job every time she presents and answers all the questions. So thank you.
We went through the items for the next meeting, so, Sam, you prepared something
did.
for the, updating the
Yes.
application form. Would you mind sending that to folks?
Sending them, I can send it or just pass it out.
Oh,
So,
that's awfully long.
So we're talking about updating the application process itself.
Yes.
As people remember, we just had a little checklist here on this page, and I thought it would need more explanation and be more in line with the tool itself. So I took a really rough shot at redoing this checklist. So if you want to pass that along. We're not gonna talk about this if we don't have time, but if people just look at this, so we just jumpstart the next conversation, which I guess is December. And think about other things we need to do to the application itself. Obviously, we need to talk about the appraisal stuff. But I thought that this would be helpful in helping the applicant answer the questions that we have.
Yes. And so my goal is we update the application form and the process document in tandem, because, that way we have an explainer for the questions that we're asking.
Yeah.
And, we have an opportunity potentially where we could automate this form, that it goes on our website, so we could move from a scan PDF to, we could potentially turn this into an automated application form on our website. Which I think is really exciting, and that could influence how we ask questions, like if we're, that way we could get in real time the application, which I think would be really cool. And the app that was beta tested with us, each of us individually would have a access code where we could go in and draw the polygons at any time, and get the GIS results. The app as presented to us is more in line with our full process, where there's qualitative questions and opportunities to adjust. So it would be taking our spreadsheet and turning that into an app. And then we discussed about how that would then become public facing, meaning, we would do an official version like we do on the spreadsheet, and Nicole was there, so she can correct me. It would kind of like turn that into a PDF in some ways. We would go in, we'd all have access before the meeting to evaluate the property. We would discuss, we would finalize and vote on a version, and then that unadjustable version would go to town council and be publicly available, which is just so darn cool. It's really neat. I'm really excited for you all to see it next meeting. I think you'll be really impressed, but it still allows us to do the artistry that is the evaluation part. It's not just a GIS input output. It still includes our knowledge, expertise,
So,
and deliberation.
Will this change the meat of our meetings?
No, I think,
No.
so, I would just kind of picture this.
Do it.
We
Right.
still have
We still have to go through it first.
Yeah.
Right, I think what it replaces handing it to Micah and coming back with the initial scoring. We would still go back and do the live scoring ourselves, and there's a place for us to make those
So
edits.
each of us will be doing it separately.
No,
You
I'm
have
saying-
the
You have the
opportunity.
opportunity.
but-
Okay.
We
Yeah.
have to determine how we would.
I think we're just taking Mike out of the
You were
Yeah,
taking my time,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of
Concentrate
just,
on the other stuff he has to
Yeah.
get done.
I believe it's true.
Yeah. So with that, it is almost 11:30. Are there any other public comment at this time? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Excellent. Thank you all.